Hey guys, this is Echo Soundworks, and you're checking out a Serum quick tip tutorial video on ADSR. In this video, we're going to talk about how you can add the same or similar feeling or style of three-dimensional depth to your sounds that you would using the wavetable position, but when you're using a virtual analog waveform or a one-cycle wavetable. So Serum is a wavetable synth. If you don't know what wavetable synthesis is, it's a form of synthesis that's generating the sound from a wavetable, which is a bunch of little snapshots, cycles, frames, whatever you want to call it, of audio. And you usually can move through those cycles, snapshots of frames of audio, much like a flip book, where you do a stick figure and fan through the pages and it moved. You can fan through those different cycles, those different waveforms, and it creates this more rich sound. There's more going on harmonically and even in terms of timbre than with a typical like square wave, a sine wave, or a saw wave. And that's one reason why a lot of people love synths like Massive and Spire and, well, Spire to a lesser extent, and Serum, and any wave shaping or wavetable synth. It gives you this option, especially in my opinion, in the box. It helps create some depth. Because I have used analog synths in the past, and they do have a lot more depth to them than for their kind of the software counterparts. So we're going to look at how you can use that same idea, modulating through this kind of like a movement-oriented feature when you're using a one-cycle waveform, which essentially at that point, it's not a wavetable. If I move this wavetable position, we can see that if we go to the wavetable editor, it's just one cycle or one frame. So it's essentially a continuous... It's just a continuous waveform, much like Silent, much like Hive, or any other of the virtual analog synths. Now, if we load up an actual wavetable, you'll see the difference here. We can just load up an access virus. You see all this information. So as I move through the wavetable position, we have this movement with the sound. Now, there's tons of reasons why this is helpful. It makes it more interesting. You can modulate with LFOs, envelopes. You can just do a bunch of things with this that create some interesting effects. Well, let's look at how we can apply that same idea, that same depth, to a one-cycle wavetable, i.e. just a basic waveform. Now, there's a bunch of reasons why you might want to blend this with a wavetable. For instance, sometimes wavetables have too much information, and if you want to create just a little bit of depth, a little bit of movement in the sound so it's not as digital sounding, it's not as perfect sounding, you can use one of the oscillators in Serum or any wavetable synth that has blending modes, and what you can do is you can use one wavetable and one waveform or one cycle waveform if you have that control. So we can see here we have a sound. In oscillator A, we have a sub, which is obviously a stagnant waveform. We have a oscillator A and oscillator B active. In oscillator A, we have this shape right here, and we have a square going on. So this is kind of like a ramped up saw with a square at the end, but it's just one waveform, so it's basically it's just one cycle, so it's basically just a waveform. Now if we play it, here's oscillator A, and here's oscillator B. Right, and that's kind of a square. We have a filter. If I take that off, turn this down. All right, so that is the sound. Let's bring in oscillator A and the sub again and the filter. Now here's our sound. This is a pretty cool sound. It sounds like something I could make in Silent as well. If we open up the filter, make it a little bit brighter. Right? Well, let's apply this movement to this one cycle waveform or wavetable here. And to do that, you have to use a blend mode. So I've chosen a pulse width modulation for the blend mode. Now, as we go through this, if I go through the wavetable position, nothing happens, right? Because there's no wavetable position to cycle through. But the pulse width modulation, the PWM blend mode, or a lot of the other blend modes, will allow you to create that movement. And watch what happens to the waveform as I move this. Okay, we can load up another one. We can do bend, minus, or plus. Let's turn off the other two oscillators and just listen to oscillator A in isolation as we do this. So if you were to have an LFO modulate this, for instance, it can really create some nice movement to your sound. So let's go back to the pulse width. And what we're going to do here is we are going to pop LFO2 into the cutoff, just because that's something you do in pretty much every synth. Okay. And we're going to pop that same LFO. Let's put it on the pulse width modulation now. Let's dial back the amount. All right, and let's turn off. Let's bypass the filter for now. And let's put that same LFO on the FM from A. Now this one won't modulate it back and forth like we're seeing on oscillator A, but it will create a really cool effect. So I'm going to reactivate or unbypass that filter. And now we have this pulse width modulation on a 1-cycle waveform. We have the FM from A, which uses blend modes here essentially. And now let's play this with this little track here, and you'll see the difference in the depth of the sound. All right, so I just played it with a little track there, but it has so much more depth and movement to it. Again, we'll just play it in isolation. And we will turn off that LFO. I'll just turn this down. So it can create some really nice movement, and it doesn't have to be as exaggerated as it is in this tutorial. You can do just a little bit. You can do custom shapes with the LFO. You can make it quicker. It just adds some really nice movement and depth to a sound. You can't do this in a synth like Silent or Hive. You can't modulate and bend the actual waveform. It's just it's a stagnant, stuck waveform. So there's just a lot of cool stuff you can do. I'll typically have this at a slower rate. And I'll have it down pretty low, but what you can do is you can achieve some great three-dimensional depth and movement in your sounds in a synth like Serum or Massive. Even when you're using and you're not moving through the wavetable positions, you're treating it as a waveform as opposed to a wavetable. If you guys have any questions or comments, let me know below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I'm Echo Soundworks. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.